Cool.
Or I could edit this out. You can talk.
Sam, you still watching AEW?
Oh yeah. No, it's the best, man.
It is, man.
I have not been this into following since 2013 or so. Just excellent.
It's pretty impressive, and they're doing all the things that WCW did wrong, where they gave all the like creative input to like their superstars that they're bringing over these guys. They're getting them involved, but they're also still like, if you look at how much that belt has moved around since Jericho won it, it's pretty cool. Everybody's kind of getting their own run with it. And then CM Punk's there now.
Wrestling?
Oh no, Sam! This is how the first time we met, we started talking about wrestling.
Oh, really? Okay.
You grew up with it. You and your brother were big into it, right, Sam?
Yeah. No, I used to torture both my brothers with wrestling moves, and they used to do that to me. Yeah. Erik, I don't have like a 2-minute reading prepared, but like I'm happy to just like pitch the book, like if that's cool.
It's up to you guys. Would you like to?
How do you guys
to?
I kind of prefer not reading or summarizing myself, but I got passages ready to go, so I can do a reading if that's what you guys want to do.
That's the professional answer. Let's go with no. Let's go with no, man.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, I'm more interested in hearing your guys' take on Noir. I think that's kind of a cool idea for a panel.
All right, are you ready to go live?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming today and joining us for the third installment of The Western Wing. It's produced by Crime Writers of Canada and focuses on the BC and Yukon region. Today, we're talking noir. If you're a member of the 40th, Crime Writers of Canada, you probably know that next year we'll be celebrating our 40th anniversary. But while doing a little bit of research, I found another big anniversary coming up. Carol John Daly has been credited for creating the first hard-boiled story, The False Burton Combs, published by Black Mask magazine in December of 1922. So next year, Noir, or hard-boiled, will be 100 years old. So today we're going to be talking about how the genre has developed, if it's still viable, and also why is Vancouver such a hotbed of noir. We've got 3 Vancouver authors here today. I should say we do go sort of in different shades. So I have 3 authors, but we come in light, medium, and let's go dark. So we're going to start with the light. A.J. Devlin writes mystery and horror books, definitely elements of noir, but not dark. He won the Award of Excellence, formerly known as the Arthur Ellis, for the best first novel in 2019. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, but also could you tell us about your protagonist, Hammerhead Jed?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you, Erik and Crime Writers of Canada. And it's an honor to be here with Sam and JT. And I went to school for screenwriting. I lived in Los Angeles and got my degrees down there. I worked in screenwriting. And then my professor, he was very big crime aficionado. He was an accomplished novelist in and of itself. And he always encouraged me, take a break from screenwriting, go and try your hand at crime novels. And he turned me on to Michael Connelly and Robert Cray and Jorah Lansdale and Tony Hillerman, and just got their hooks into me. And so he would always encourage me to read more than to watch movies in terms of developing characters. And then, so when I was trying to come up with, it was always trying to come up with a series character. Excuse me. I'd read a lot of athlete detective books, surfer detectives, baseball player detectives, sports agent detectives, but nobody had, to the best of my knowledge, really done a pro wrestler before, pro wrestler detective. So I sort of saw that as an angle. And that's how I sort of came up with the genesis of Hammerhead Jed Ounstead, who's a former wrestling star turned private eye in the city of Vancouver. And it's a fun series to write. And it's definitely, I try to create sort of hard boiled. I think of it as hard boiled, but sort of with a bit of quirkiness and kind of athletic themed. So that's the sort of the gist of the series I'm currently working on.
Thank you, AJ. Not to be outdone, Sam Wiebe was the finalist for many prestigious awards and has won several of them, including last year's Awards of Excellence for Best Novella. I'm happy that he's able to join us today because I know he's incredibly busy promoting his newest book, Hell and Gone. Sam, could you tell us a little bit also about yourself and also Dave Wakeland?
Yeah, well, I thank you, first of all, Erik, for having me, and I'm happy to be here with JT and AJ. I do have a first name, not initials, so I'm not saying I'm better because of that, but you know, it's the details that set you apart. I started writing at an early age, and you know, I always loved mystery and detective fiction, going back to the, you know, Encyclopedia Brown and the Hardy Boys and all that kind of stuff. I was really into the 80s and 90s private eye writers, Robert B. Parker, Sue Grafton, Lawrence Block, Walter Mosley. And then when I got into late adolescence, I really started to think about writing as a career. And it took me a couple of years to get the courage up to start doing this, but started by submitting short stories to Thuglit and Spine Tingler and all these awesome indie noir pulp magazines that were around about 10 years ago. And sadly, most of them are gone. But that was sort of how I got my start. And then writing the first novel, Last of the Independents, and then the Wakeland series, which is Invisible Dead, Cut You Down, and my latest, Hell and Gone. Dave Wakeland is a young private detective who is partnered with Jeff Chen. The two of them run a very successful security and private investigation company. Dave, I would describe him as being the Steve Wozniak of the group. He's the guy who is willing to stay up all night on a stakeout, the guy who has no boundaries between work and home life, and somebody who is, in his own way, really, really good at his job. And Jeff is the Steve Jobs, the person who can package that and make that accessible and sell it. So the two of them have this very push and pull relationship where Jeff is very buttoned down and business oriented, and Dave is somebody who gets obsessed with cases and is also has a little bit of that East Van guilt about his success and seeks out cases that kind of push him ethically into doing something that's worthwhile, whether it's looking for runaways or getting involved in issues like gentrification and addiction, and his cases just seem to pull him into those kinds of issues. In the latest book, Hell and Gone, Dave witnesses an act of violence on the streets of Vancouver's Chinatown, and he actually does what every private detective hero should do. He leaps down, literally leaps out the window of his office, remembers his St. John's ambulance, ABCs, airway, breathing, cardiac, and administers first aid, actually saves someone's life, and he's a hero. But he goes that one step too far and goes into the building where the shooters had just come from. And in there, he sees something that so traumatizes him that when the police show up and ask what he saw, he just says, "Man, I didn't see a fucking thing." And that's where the book starts, is with him dealing with this and also being caught at the center of this, basically a manhunt for the shooters. And pardon my French for swearing, but, noir, I got to get one in.
It's only one. JT, has Sam convinced you to go with Jeremy yet, or should I call you JT?
Either's fine, JT, Jeremy, as long as it's not too confusing.
All right. So JT, we're all going to have to wait till April for your first novel, your debut novel, To Those Who Killed Me, which was nominated for an Awards of Excellence for the Unhanged Award, which is unpublished novel. but we can get a sneak peek of it, which I did on his website. He breaks the mold a little bit by giving us a female lead. She's not yet a PI, but I heard that there's going to be a warning label on your cover. I didn't see it on your website, but I heard there was going to be one. So
that's right.
I'm definitely safe to say it's a little bit on the darker side. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself, but also Sloan Donovan?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Eric. And it's a real honor to be on this panel. So thanks for inviting me. It's awesome to be sitting amongst a couple of local crime writing heavyweights. This is my first one of these, so bear with me. I guess it all started for me. I mean, I was a prodigious reader as a kid, and tried my hand at a few short stories here and there, and it was kind of hit and miss. But I moved to Vancouver, and then I moved from the Okanagan to Vancouver in the 90s, and there were some great movies coming out around that time, right? And I didn't even know to label them as noir, but I really fell in love with movie, True Romance, Heat, Seven, delved back into movies in the 70s like Taxi Driver and things like that. It played a huge part, a big inspiration for me. And I was still reading novels throughout that time, but kind of all over the map with regards to that. And so I decided to study screenwriting. And I thought, this is gonna be really easy. I can churn out a script in a few weeks if I'm really inspired, right? 120 pages, lots of dialogue. Dialogue is kind of my thing. So I found it quite easy and a lot of fun. And it was I had no desire to become a director, no real desire to be in the film industry. I just love movies and writing. But I got in the habit of writing. I wrote about a dozen screenplays. None of them really went anywhere. Got a little discouraged toward the end. And so I kind of dove into the world of like Charles Bukowski, and I kind of channeled that energy for a little while, and got into short stories and started writing short stories. And tried my hand at a novel, which I had no idea how to go about it. It turned out to be heavy on crime, very, very dark stuff. Didn't end well for the protagonist in the end, and I'm scared to look back on that beast, maybe one day. I kept pursuing the writing, and took some courses. I wrote an early draft of the first Sloan Donovan novel. Didn't know how to outline or anything like that, and I brought it into one of my first crime writing classes put on by William Deverell at UBC. And he read the opening pages, and he wrote, reminds me of Elmore Leonard, and that really sort of stuck with me, and that gave me the impetus to sort of keep going with that. And he told me that it's really you need to go back. There's something here you need to go back to and restructure and outline. I didn't want to do any of that shit, but I followed his advice, went back to and rewrote it. And I submitted it to the Arthur Ellis Awards, and it was to my surprise, it was shortlisted, and those little things, and even then it didn't really get off the ground. I needed to listen to some people, learn to take advice. I was slow to take advice in the industry, and that slowed me down a little bit. But I was lucky enough to meet some cool people a couple of years ago, and AJ being one of them, and got it into New West. And so they during the early days of the pandemic, I was called by the general manager and with an offer to publish it. So that was cool. Cool thing to happen early in the pandemic. And since then, I've gone on to write the second Sloan Donovan, and I've written the first draft of the third one. And that's kind of where I'm at today, and just looking to go back and wrap up the final touches on the first novel before it goes to print. So I'm pretty excited. This is a good time. I'm pretty stoked. So thanks.
That must be a very exciting time.
Yeah.
As opposed to trying to explain to everybody or defining noir, I pulled out two quotes, and I wanted to get your opinions of it. JT, your mic's still on, so if you want to start, you can start with this one. This is a contemporary writer, Megan Abbott, and she said, "In noir, everyone is fallen, and right and wrong are not clearly defined, and maybe not even obtainable." Any thoughts on that comment? And honestly, Sam and AJ, if you want to just dive in, you're welcome.
I'm actually going to defer to AJ for a moment on that one, and I'll mull that over.
Well, not to get off track, but I think I'm the only one who hasn't sworn yet on a noir panel. So I'm just going to say son of a bitch and get out of the way. No, I actually, that's funny you bring up that quote because I had written that down and about Megan Abbott, and she's a fantastic writer. But yeah, it's, I think true noir, according to her definition, true noir is right and wrong are not clearly defined, she writes, and may not even be attainable. Whereas hard-boiled, which is very much akin to noir, the main character is usually a detective or a cop, and he's heroic, and he kind of, he's troubled and fallen, but at the end, everything's a mess, people have died, but the hero's done the right thing, and to a certain degree, order has been restored. Whereas with noir, I guess pure noir, that's just not so much the case. And yeah, so like last night, just to get ready for this panel, I rewatched that opening scene of Touch of Evil, which is probably my favorite Orson Welles scene. Man, that's so good. And but I mean, if based on that definition, movies more like No Country for Old Men, Nightcrawler, and then I don't know, a lot of people haven't seen this one, House of Games by David Mamet. That I think that those would be considered more classic noir because they aren't detectives or police officers and people that are drawn into these world, and it's all about moral ambiguity. Where I guess hard-boiled, you kind of have that anchor point with the protagonist, regardless of how fallen or damaged they may be.
Yeah, I mean, I've almost gotten to the point where I just don't want to define noir anymore, because I think it's just one of those things like pornography where you know it when you see it. Not that they have the same moral content or anything, but Megan Abbott is a great author, and I really like the fact that she's found this niche of writing suburban noir and having this probably the most improbable setting for the kind of dark, twisted noir storyline is the suburbs, focusing on like teenage gymnasts or athletes or whatever, cheerleaders. I mean, it's such a great duality, and I think that to me is a big part of noir. Is it's not just this never-ending parade of misery and sadness and moral ambiguity. It's showing that kind of stuff underneath the everyday life, that there is this sort of tourist friendly face to a city, and then there's other stuff going on below that. And all of those categories, noir, hardboiled, I mean, they all bleed over, they bleed into movies. So I think it's just, I almost just use it as a synonym for dark fiction at this point. But there are definitely differences between noir and hardboiled and all that stuff if you want to get academic.
Here's the place to do it. JT, any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with the emphasis on the moral ambiguity, and those are the to me the most interesting characters, where they're the protagonists, where they really explore the gray area. You can't define them as not they use the word anti-hero, but it could even be somebody who's kind of a bad guy, but ends up doing a good deed, or vice versa. So the line between the good guys and the bad guys is not clearly defined, and I think that makes for the most interesting kind of fiction. I find that in a lot of the fiction that we're talking about, there's really a sense of desperation, and the characters, the protagonists, are literally people hovering on the brink. They might be okay today, but tomorrow they could be absolutely ruined. And there has to be a sort of imminent sense of danger. And I really love the mood of a lot of noir, whether it's in film or fiction. A lot of people complain about the weather right now, but I find this time of year is really conducive to a noir. I look out my window over the cityscape and I see a light mist, and it's perfect for that. So it's easier for me to create a noirish atmosphere in November than it is in the middle of summer, for instance. So I try to use that to these dark months to my advantage in that.
To those of you, or if anybody's watching from out east, we're in Vancouver right now, we're sitting between two big storms. so today's like the eye of the storm almost. Well, here's another quote then, and as opposed to a contemporary, this is perhaps the father, the godfather of noir or hardboiled. I think he would be checkmarked for both. Raymond Chandler. So the creator Philip Marlowe literally wrote the book on noir called The Simple Art of Murder. He describes his protagonist of hardboiled detective stories as, down these mean streets, a man must go who is not himself mean, who is neither tarnished nor afraid. He is the hero, he is everything. He must be a complete man and a common man, and yet an unusual man. He must be, to use a rather weathered phrase, a man of honor. So my question not only to that comment is, I mean, that's very much Philip Marlowe, Sam Spade. How do you think the modern protagonist or your protagonist has either stayed that course or has altered it? And again, whoever wants to speak, just go.
Well, I think, I love Chandler's work, and it obviously is a huge influence on my writing. But I think what's interesting about that quote, and it's probably the most famous quote attached to any mystery, genre, from hardboiled to noir and all of that, is that, he doesn't even really follow that in his own books. I mean, The Big Sleep opens with him showing up at a mansion dressed up in his best suit. So it's always interpreted as the mean streets of alleyways and a guy in a fedora and a trench coat and a gun and stuff. But it's a metaphor for the city, in his case, Los Angeles, and the historical forces, the social forces, the structure and the power going on beneath that. And it's not just that it's full of criminals or morally suspect people, it's that everyone is sort of tainted by this. I had a great conversation the other day with Carly Baker, who was in the Vancouver Noir anthology I put together. And she writes short stories from an Indigenous perspective. And when she wrote her noir story for the collection, one of the things that was just so striking to me was bringing in that idea of, the whole city is part of a land theft. And there's this whole history of, where Vancouver came from as a colonial outpost on the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. And so adding this other dimension where you have the tourist face of the city, then you have the bad shit that people are doing underneath that, and then you have these almost geological or historical crimes that are going. And all three of those levels I think are really interesting. And that is something that I'm trying to be a little bit more cognizant of in my own work, is not just putting in some cool shit and shootouts and stuff, but also what's really going on in the city. How did it end up like this? How come, as somebody in their 30s who should be able to buy a house, nobody can buy a house here? Everybody's leaving for the suburbs, like AJ and I. And it's there's a lot of weird stuff going on here that maybe you wouldn't call the mean streets, but has a really debilitating effect on people. So that's what I try to focus on in the Wakeland series.
How about you, AJ? Is Hammerhead an honorable man?
I mean, I like to think so. He definitely has his own moral code. He doesn't care for bullies. What I enjoyed in the first book, Cobra Clutch, which introduced him, was through a series of circumstances, his former tag team partner, who wrestles with a pet snake, sort of like as a poor man's Jake the Snake Robert, someone kidnaps the snake and holds it for ransom. So it starts off a little like a bit of a silly ransom. But as things escalate, he comes to the conclusion that because he knows the wrestling world, he's actually a step ahead of than the police, because he's so familiar with the environment. And then that's something that's really fun to explore, especially with Sam talking about sort of like what you see is on like the surface and what's underneath. Well, that's sort of what one of the things that drew me to pro wrestling. And to be honest, I'm actually more intrigued by what happens in pro wrestling behind the scenes and outside of the ring than the actual product in the ring, as fantastic as it is. But at times it can be just overly theatrical and colorful and vivid. But the dark underbelly of professional wrestling is definitely present. So I kind of wanted to take a character and have them sort of navigate that, be familiar with that, and then along the way discover things about himself, and that he always thought of himself as a wrestler, but then he kind of he's able to help some people, and then I think he kind of maybe discovers his real purpose in trying to make a difference and help people, and then that's very cathartic for him to do. So
JT, obviously having a female protagonist, does that change the narrative at all?
Yes and no. It's interesting. I'm getting asked more and more about why I chose to write a female protagonist, and it actually started as a short story years ago. I wrote a short story. It's based on a real event that happened at my workplace back then, and there was a murder, and one of my coworkers, woman I work with, she was the one who found the body, and I sort of watched as she became unhinged as a result of that experience and having to go to court and everything else. And so I wrote a short story based upon not so much the murder, but about how she was affected by the discovery of the body. And she wasn't a close friend of mine, but she had some issues, and it was exacerbated by that. And I thought, I wrote the story first person POV from a female perspective, and it was well received. And I thought, Sloane, she sort of came ready-made, and I thought there's something here. At that time I worked with a lot of really strong females, really capable women physically and mentally, and they're tough. And I thought this is an interesting character to explore. And here I've already got her, in a short story. Let's see if I can flesh her into a novel. And so it wasn't a lot of deliberating to do that. And I think it worked pretty well. I wanted a character who could handle herself, but not resort to the kind of violence a man would. I didn't want to create another second coming of Harry Bosch or something like that, although I really admire those characters too. So I fell in love with the character, and she sort of spoke to me. It wasn't a stretch, and I sort of drew upon. She's kind of an amalgamation of different women I've known, and it went from there. And Sloane's, she's a troubled individual. She struggles with mental illness and addiction issues, which kind of fits the noir genre. Characters hovering on the brink, and she's an ex-cop. So if you're in law enforcement, it's really not a good idea to be mentally ill. So she lied about her mental illness to get on the force, and sort of cheated the polygraph and all that kind of stuff. So she got on the force, and then a really tragic event occurred in her life as a result of involving her law enforcement. And so she was canned. She institutionalized for a little while, and came out of that, and she ended up doing something completely different. So major PTSD issues. And my story opens with her at work discovering a body, and not just a body, but a body of a close friend. And this completely triggers her PTSD, but also her need to atone for her previous lapse, which resulted in tragedy. So she's not a private investigator in the beginning, but she has a law enforcement background. She's good at what she does. She's obsessive, so I turned her mental illness into an asset. And she's a person who's willing to bend a few rules to get things done. But deep down, she's a good person. I think people will resonate. I think it's a character people resonate with. So yeah.
I'm noticing a common thread with all three of you. and I didn't intend on noticing it, but there is a serious, all your protagonists seem to have mental health issues or feelings of guilt, PTSD. Does that add to your character, and is it almost a trope for the genre, or what does it bring to the character?
Should I go first?
You're the first one.
Yeah. Okay. So when the character of Sloan, when I was initially writing an early draft, this is kind of before I planned everything out and everything, and I didn't identify her as in terms of what her issue was. You know, she obviously clearly had something going on, but I didn't want to label it. And then the more research I did, and I, you know, talked to different people and had other people read the initial draft, or at least the first few chapters. One gal that I know who actually is bipolar, she goes, you know, she seems bipolar to me. And then I of course, you know, I'd heard that term. I hadn't really researched it at all. And then when I actually did the research, I'm like, this works. This is what Sloan is, and or what the condition that she struggles with has. So I can't pretend to know what that's like to have that. Although I was given the fairly enthusiastic thumbs up of a few people that have that illness, and it gave me kind of the confidence to move forward with that. So it's used to an asset with Sloan, because she's able to tap into that obsessive nature. If she's just an average person, why would you become so obsessed about solving a crime of, even if you do find your friend dead? And so she takes it to some pretty crazy levels to search for the truth.
I used a good word too that I think all three of you used, obsessed. Any thoughts, AJ or Sam?
Yeah, sure. No, I think that's a good quality to be a detective. You know, that you always get your man. But yeah, I mean, I think to a degree it is, you know, a bit of a trope, the whole you know, damaged protagonist. But you know, it also works. And so for me, it was just a matter of finding my own way to kind of put a twist on it, or to make it familiar, but also just different enough that it kind of feels like maybe it, like, you know, a bit of a, you know, unique. And so I what I did with my character, and this is one of the sort of the subplots in Cobra Clutch, the first book, and its result, or the answer by the end of the book you discover, but he was like a rising superstar in the world of professional wrestling, and he was just sort of about to really blow up and go to that main card, main event level status, and then he just walks away cold from the business, and then he's just sort of bumming around Vancouver, and he's doing odd jobs for his dad, who's a retired police officer turned private detective, and then he's working as a bouncer, and it's only through circumstances that he's sort of brought back into that world. And but that's a big part of who he is. And then that narrative and that sort of subplot of this skeleton in his closet and this thing that he lives with, that's something that he carries forward in all the books. So I think in a lot of ways it made him a better detective, and I'd like to think that it makes him sort of sympathetic and an interesting character to follow, but also he's still dealing with it. He's still processing a lot of that, and then working and helping people is something that's, you know, very therapeutic, I think, for him.
Yeah, I think AJ put it perfectly when he said that it's about putting your own spin on that. You know, people talk about like cliches of the genre. Like, there's nothing that I love more. A cliche is just like perfectly warmed up bathwater. It's just so comfortable, and I love it. You know, I love all the, you know, femme fatale and all that stuff. But I think to do that stuff credibly in modern times, you have to put your own spin on it. You know, you can't have a guy walking around in a trench coat. You can't have a woman with giant shoulder pads who's, you know, the killer, like that kind of stuff. And when it comes to damage and PTSD and stuff like that, like that's still such a very new field. I mean, just the amount of different terms that, you know, where it used to be called combat fatigue or battle fatigue and all this kind of stuff. I think for me, and what what really interested me in Helen Gone is the accumulation of horrible stuff that Dave has seen. And I think that that's just something that, you know, who among us doesn't have their own little gallery of, you know, stuff that you go through, and, you know, it builds up. And I think that there are definitely detective characters who kind of reset at the end of every book. You know, like that was kind of a trope for like TV shows in the 70s and 80s. You know, this one character has a niece, and then the niece gets murdered and they find the killer at the end of the 44 minutes. And then the next episode happens and it's like she never existed. Like that kind of just instant reset of characterization. And I prefer to go the other way. I like the idea that each one of the books adds something to Dave's journey, so that when we get to book 4, fingers crossed that there is a book 4, it can be the thing that actually, like, you know, sends him over the edge. But with Helen Gone, it's just sort of this event that he sees and doesn't know how to process. It's violence that's just beyond what is in his purview. You know, in a lot of ways, Dave is kind of the modern day, like, Jim Rockford. Like, he's just a guy who's on the side of the underdog. He's good with a cutting remark. He used to be a boxer, so he's good with his fists, but the stuff he keeps coming up against is just beyond his abilities. And that is something that I built into the series from the beginning. Even though he's kind of a tough guy and can fight a little bit, in Invisible Dead, one of the people that he runs into is an MMA fighter and just cleans his clock completely. And so it's about adapting and figuring out, okay, I can't beat this guy physically, but can I outsmart him? And I love stuff like that, just trying to put a little bit of a contemporary spin and just think about those cliches and why they're so dear to us, why they show up in so many books, and making them new. You know, I think that that's just part of what I love about working in a genre. And I think it's the highest honor to a genre is to, you know, take those things and make them feel like nobody's done it before.
I read a lot of books on how to write mysteries, and yeah, there's always that balance of formula versus innovation, right? And you know, we're dealing, again, we're talking hard-boiled, a genre that's been around for 100 years, and you always have to think, how are you going to add to this? What are you going to bring to this? One thing that the three of you bring is a new setting. You're all right in Vancouver. I think, JT, you're the only one who actually lives still in Vancouver, but the rest of us live in the suburbs, and we've seen enough. Again, whoever wants to answer first, but what do you think, or why do you think, and Sam, you've talked to it a little bit, why do you think Vancouver makes an excellent setting for noir? And in theory then, could you take your story to another city and would it still be relevant, or does it have to be a Vancouver story?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I wrote Last of the Independents in 2012, I think, 2011, you know, there weren't a ton of books set here. I mean, William Deverell had written a great series, but most of those were on the island. His earlier books, Needles and so on, were set here. Lawrence Goff had written a great series about a detective couple, Willows and Parker, which were set here. And there were a couple of other books, but I think it's really taken off. And it's one of those places that has all of the makings of a setting like Edinburgh and Scotland, some of the Scandinavian countries and cities. It's that thing of, it's a beautiful tourist destination, you know, and the fact that Vancouver hosted the Olympics and was sort of, you know, right coming into its own on a global scale, you know, it's just perfect. So everybody knows what it looks like. If you've watched anything on the CW network in the last 10 years, you know what it looks like. If you grew up watching X-Files or Highlander or Street Legal, you know what it looks like. So it's a very familiar city, a very beautiful city, and also a city that was home to the poorest postal code in the country, the city with the first legalized injection site. So at the forefront of harm reduction. It's a city where a lot of the colonial stuff is kind of getting played out, and you're seeing, First Nations rights and Indigenous sovereignty kind of play out. So it's a really interesting place that's beautiful, but there's also a lot of very interesting and complex social issues playing out below that. And I think it's just a perfect setting for noir. I don't actually know why there isn't more stuff. I mean, there's the three of us. There's Sheena Kamal and Dietrich Kaltheis, and I'm probably missing somebody, but that's kind of it. I mean, it should be on the rise, I think.
Hey, I've asked you this question before, and I've even asked you, like, if somebody want to film a movie and give you like millions of dollars, but they wanted to, put it in Seattle or something, that you turn it down. So you still in that position?
Well, sounds pretty snobby. No, I mean, but I think what Sam speaks about is true, that there's a complexity and a richness to Vancouver. For me, it almost took me moving and living in Los Angeles for 6-7 years while I was going to school down there to realize just how special Vancouver was. I don't want to say I took it for granted, but there was more going on than I initially realized. And then I was always coming to and from. And it was funny because I had read Chandler and all that stuff. And I was in LA and I was in Hollywood, and I would go have lunch with a friend at, like Musso and Frank's. And it was so cool. But then I remembered, like, well, Vancouver is just as rich. Like, there's just as much history going on there. And I think the three of us collectively also, we all kind of zero in on the downtown east side in particular as a location, because there's just so much going on. It's so fascinating. And then it's just this pocket, this radius. And then, you drive a block or two, and then you're in like the financial district. And it's just such a distinctive, unique thing. So I think for me, Vancouver will always be intrinsic to the series. All my stories, I think, will take place there to some degree, although I do have ideas. Like, I'd like to take, as the series grows, I'd like to take the character and do like I have an idea for a story that takes place up in Kelowna. I have one where a sidekick character is Irish, and so it requires them to go back to Ireland. So there's things I want to take him out of his familiar setting, but that's always going to be his home, and that's always going to be where he's going back to. And it's just so rich that it's so cool because we're all kind of writing about the same thing, but we're all doing it in just incredibly different ways. And it's such a thrill to read these guys' works, and then the work Sam did putting together Vancouver Noir, which I think really put Vancouver on the map with that Akashic series, which was fantastic. And so I do think it's an exciting time for Vancouver in particular, and then just in general West Coast crime fiction.
Yeah, just to sort of piggyback on something AJ said, sort of about the juxtaposition of extreme poverty and extreme and wealth, and even on a street like Hastings Street, where you have that Main and Hastings and a few blocks the financial district. But I worked for many years and still do in West Vancouver, and I was spending a lot of time in the downtown east side. So my novel reflects that too, the juxtaposition of the two, the wealthiest enclave, and definitely the poorest. And I thought that was an interesting, so the story starts in West Van, but it jumps back and forth and then into the mountains of the North Shore as well. So tapping into the natural beauty, a place where I lived for many years in North Vancouver. And right now I live right on the edge of Stanley Park. So it's gorgeous. I don't anticipate I'm going to set very many scenes right here. It's not dark enough. It's not gritty enough, but our downtown core is relatively small, and I walk and cycle all the time, and I love the alleys. I've spent a lot of time in some sort of method writing in the downtown east side, and I've been in all those bars. I spent time around there, and I won't pretend to I've never lived down there, so it's a little bit a bit of a phony with that, but I wanted to absorb that into my novels, and in doing that, I mean, I saw some really mind-blowing things, and they make it into this novel too. As a matter of fact, The publisher even called me out for one of them. He said, this is too much. This is over the top. And I go, I saw that. I basically wrote exactly what I saw. If it doesn't work for the novel, it doesn't work. But I'd like to leave it in there. It is in there. I won't say what that is. You've got to read it to find out. But it's a incredibly vibrant, diverse city. I love living here. I can't imagine living anywhere else. I've gotten to know these streets so well. The smells and the feel and the textures, and each neighborhood's a little bit different. And I love traveling as well. And so even within this novel, I actually, one of the near the climax is set in Costa Rica. So I jumped down to Central America for a few chapters, a place I happened to go on vacation when I was writing the early drafts. So I wrote that in, and it works into the plot as well. So I write what I know as far as the locale, and it just rings true. It feels authentic. I wouldn't have the same ability, no matter how much I research it, to write Toronto or Seattle or some other city.
On that note of research and settings, my wife's always like, could you put your next book in Hawaii? Call it a write-off. I was going to ask just really quickly, how many of us are actual Vancouver born? It's rare to meet them. No, so we're all from outside?
No, I was
born. Sam?
Yeah.
New West, but yeah. New West, Royal Columbian for me.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm from Vernon in the interior.
Damn, I'm sorry, Jeremy.
Yeah, it's rough.
Sorry. I can't help it.
I'll put some flashback scenes in there.
Vernon's nice. Yeah, another thing about Vancouver, and other cities have it. I think Seattle has it too, but you going down Hastings Street, it's the business center, and you can go one block maybe around Simon Fraser, and all of a sudden you're in, like Sam said, the poorest postal district in Canada. Although I've never found it too dangerous. I don't know if you have any different feelings, but I never found the east side of Hastings that dangerous compared to like New York, Montreal. There is something about Vancouver, and it's more than just the weather.
I think it's kind of oddly welcoming, to be honest, the downtown east side. Probably the best thing I did before, when I was writing Cobra Clutch, I had the opportunity to do a ride along on the downtown east side. It was more like a walk along. And you just like Jeremy was saying, or JT was saying, with the tout smells and the textures, and it's one thing to drive by these places, it's another to like walk around, and you just see things you could never ever make up, or at least I couldn't. And like one time, it was a few years ago, and it was like around this time of year, so it's cold and wet. And as I was driving right through past Pigeon Park, I look over and I see a guy with no shirt on. He's wrapped it around his head like a hat, and he's pushing a lawnmower. And I did like a double take, and I'm trying to figure out, wait a second, what's he doing with a lawnmower? There's no lawn, within blocks of it. And then I just wonder, like, how did that guy get that lawnmower? What's his story? And like everybody that you kind of just can people watch down there, you just wonder, like, what's this person's story? What are they up to? What did they do today? What's their past? And it's just it's endless inspiration and just visuals, just visual things that you I just think that you don't see in other places.
Yeah, I was in my aforementioned Bukowski phase when I was down in the downtown east side doing some research in some of those bars there. You walk in and order a drink, and they convinced I was a cop when I first. Nobody would speak to me. So I had to go back a few more times and rough myself up a little bit and assume the part a little bit more. But when they found out I was when a few of them found out I was a writer, and I was in there, they thought that was pretty cool. They were very, very forthcoming about their lives and extremely friendly. I didn't experience one moment where I felt like I was in danger. You have to keep your wits about you for sure. But it can. I found I almost spent a night in one of the SROs down there. I say almost because I was afraid of bed bugs, and I couldn't get it just depressed me after a while. And the sights and I absorbed all I could, and I ended up leaving after a few hours. But definitely those things stuck with me, and they also definitely assist the writing and hopefully the authentic feel of my work.
Yeah, I mean, I should preface what I say by noting that, you know, I'm a tough and heavy set and tall white guy. Not tough, but tough looking. So when I say that I don't feel threatened in the downtown east side, I mean, it's not threatening to me. That is a neighborhood that is known for being very predatory on women and people of color and indigenous people, especially. And my experiences, though, like I used to go there as a kid when I was in a band and just go to all the pawn shops, which are now gone. There used to be one called San Francisco Pawn that was near the police museum, and I'd go in there looking for, you know, cheap drum stuff. It's a really interesting neighborhood, and yes, there's a lot of poverty and despair and that kind of stuff, but it's also the heart of a lot of the social justice movements in Canada. Tenants' rights, Indigenous rights, you know, safe drug use and safe supply, all of that stuff kind of starts there. So when I write about it, I try to write with that in mind. I don't want to just paint it as this place where, you know, it's scary to go through and it's everyone's miserable, because I mean, there's a lot of diversity and vibrancy in that community. There's also a lot of great writers and artists and poets there. I worked at a chapbook making workshop with my friend Mercedes once at the library in Hastings. And, you know, I ended up putting this guy's book of poems together who'd been living there for like, you know, 30, 40 years. And every time I walk into Pulp Fiction or a store that has his little chapbook with the East Van Cross on it, I'm like, I typeset that fucking thing, you know. It's so it's really important to me not to represent it as just this scary place. And also nowadays with gentrification, the downtown east side's a lot different. A lot of that really gnarly stuff has been pushed to Surrey and some of the suburbs. So, you know, if you drive through North Surrey, as you can see in the trailer for Hell and Gone, you're hitting all the pawn shops and all the kind of disreputable stuff there. So as the cities become unlivably expensive, a lot of the people who used to live there are kind of being pushed to the bridge and tunnel neighborhoods. But it is just a fascinating place, and there's such a great sense of history to downtown Vancouver.
Yeah, being the odd man out, I actually came from Montreal, and I lived in the East End for when I first moved here, before getting jobs and having any money. Yeah, definitely a very interesting place to live in, and definitely also changing. Like, I guess just about every other city is changing right now. That pretty much wraps it up, unless you guys have any final comments.
I got a final comment. Go out and buy Hell and Gone right now, and keep your eyes peeled for To Those Who Killed Me coming in April, because there are going to be a couple of barn burners, great reads.
And Rolling Thunder, man.
Yeah, man.
And Rolling Thunder, yeah. Rolling Thunder's out, and then the third book in the trilogy is coming out next fall, which is exciting. So it's fun to be back and you know, playing in that sandbox again. But every time you kind of just build different castles.
Yeah, and please buy books. Try to buy them from independent bookstores if you can. Although Chapters, Amazon, it's all good, but you know, those neighborhood stores are really the lifeblood of the Vancouver publishing industry and Canada's publishing industry. So please make sure to get out there and support them. Pulp Fiction and Book Warehouse and Paperhound, Upstart and Crow, Iron Dog, Massey, Browns, Black Bond. I could keep naming them, but I'm going to run out. Western Sky.
Western Sky is great. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, these are just great stores, and they stock books that you're not going to, you know, that are vital to the community. So please support them and pick them up.
For AJ and I, we finally have one coming to Port Moody, our neighborhood. So
is that Coastal Books? Yeah,
Coastal Books is coming to
they're opening up, I believe,
exciting.
next week. Yeah, so that's going to be great.
It's good to see the independent bookstores coming back, because they almost died, right? So it's good to see them again.
No, it's great. And then it's so cool too, because you get to know the owners and the people that work there, and then they will recommend things, and they'll be like, hey, so I noticed you enjoyed this book. And then you're not just going in to buy books and support local businesses, but you're also going in for that camaraderie. Like when I was a kid, I used to go, or younger, I used to go to the comic book shop, and I was more excited about asking questions about something I'd read than picking up my latest comics. And so that's a fun place to kind of go and to be surrounded by people with a shared passion.
Yeah, and I remember AJ's awesome book launch for Cobra Clutch, where you had the Iron Dog bookmobile parked outside. Right. I mean, what a cool, Amazon's not going to be out there with a bookmobile to support other writers. So like this stuff's just really important. And and also thanks, Erik, for having us.
Yes, thank you, Erik.
Thanks, Erik.
Thank you again for coming. Yep. Everyone watching, thank you very much. If you watched to the end, thank you extremely much. Always good to have you. This is like I said, our third episode. So we've had previous episodes. And if you're looking at this saying, hey, there's a lot of guys here, you guys are actually my first male guest. So thank you for coming. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.